From the Aligned Space Studios in Westchester, PA, this is the Space Podcast, where you have one of Westchester's most interesting people and me. I'm Pat Taggart, your host. Let's go. Eli, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Pat.
So the first Space Podcast, and we're thinking, listen, we have to get a good first guest or there's not going to be a second. We figure where else to start than the 2018 winner, Greater Westchester Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year. Congrats on that.
Hey, you may not have a second after this, but let's give it a shot. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You went to school here. You went to school down the street at Westchester University.
I did.
Tell me about your experience.
I grew up in Allentown. Never heard of Westchester. Played baseball in high school and got the opportunity to play baseball here at Westchester. That's really what brought me down here. 1982, college. I knew I was going to college, but I had always hustled as a kid, many different jobs. I knew I was going to end up just doing something in business. So I really came here to play baseball. Had a phenomenal experience. I absolutely fell in love with the town. It was a completely different place back then, but the vibe, this small town, just really stole my heart almost from the moment I got here. Allentown growing up for me was, if anyone's ever listened to Billy Joel's song "Living Here in Allentown," that was my experience in Allentown. It was a city and an area really in decay. It was crashing as I was living there, as Bethlehem Steel closed and Mack Truck closed, and it was a great place as a young kid. And then I just watched the decline. And when I left, it was like, I'm leaving and I don't really want to go back. Allentown's had a great resurgence, but this town really just stole my heart. I had a phenomenal experience at Westchester, loved it, met some lifelong friends. The now president of Westchester University, Chris Fiorentino, was my economics 101 professor. We're still friendly today. He's a great guy. I'm so proud of him to now be the president of the university. So yeah, it's a great place.
And the place looks a little different now. I know you've helped along the way with that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, my first job when I got here was the first Domino's franchise to open up, and I was their first delivery man. And I'd say 50% of the storefronts on Gay Street were empty and vacant. It was just a completely different town. They had just done the Gay Street renovation with the brick sidewalks and the street lamps. And, there were biker bars, and it was just a complete, pizza places. And it's nothing like it is today. It's pretty incredible to see where it's come.
My wife went to school here, and she comes back, and it's like half pride and half incredible jealousy that they didn't have that type of feel. And I mean, the downtown is so built up. You and I, if we left this place, we could walk to probably 75 places to eat in about 2 minutes.
It's incredible. Yeah. And back then, the kids never really came into town. You had the Rathskeller Bar, the Rat, which was down next to campus. And
I may have been there a couple times.
Yeah. I dropped a lot of I have a lot of DNA spread around that building, but it was just a different environment, and town completely changed. Small town America, life in small town America changed, and growing up in a town and wanting to continue life in a town, I came here, graduated, and just stayed. I moved maybe 4 or 5 different times after I graduated, living with roommates, and then getting married to my wife, Jean, who is also a Golden Ram. And we just stayed. We lived here for 25 years.
Very cool. Yeah. Now, most kids, when they're in school, are just worried about having enough money to go to the bar. You decided to buy student housing, essentially, while you were still in school. That's some good advice from Pop, huh?
My dad managed a manufacturing plant, a factory. I would go with him. My brothers and I would go with him in the summer to work there, and it just taught us hard work and what real work is like. But we always had jobs. We were always hustling. And when I got here, I had multiple jobs, pizza delivery. I sold vacuums, encyclopedias, if you can believe it or not, for a period of time. Many of your listeners won't even know what those are.
I do, sadly.
Yes. So this thing just, I was living in a rooming house with 12 other guys. I was one of the last guys to get asked to live in this rooming house on Price Street. And, the landlord kind of abandoned the place, and I was the guy who was asked to go find out what's going on. So I did, and found out that the guy who actually owned it was the father of the guy who we thought was the landlord, and his son had kind of disappeared, and he ended up selling me the building, convincing me that I seemed like an enterprising guy that, why don't you buy this building? And
How old were you?
I was 20.
Oh, man.
And
So you couldn't buy a beer legally.
couldn't buy a beer legally.
But you bought a building.
Yeah, and a professor at Westchester and another friend, Mike Pike, who I had met I think my freshman year, and Mike owned some apartments in Westchester, so I went to Mike, and he gave me some advice and hooked me up with an attorney and helped me structure the deal, and my light bulb went off at that moment. It was something that was tangible. It was a very it really just struck me as something that you could see the results, physically see and touch the results of your hard work, and that really resonated with me.
Do you think being an entrepreneur is something you're born with? Because I know you talked about how growing up you always felt like, one day you're going to go in business for yourself. And I know a lot of people have this American dream of, hey, I'm going to go out to work for myself. And more often than not, it doesn't work.
I don't know if it's something you're born with. I don't know if it's a genetic thing. I think it's something that is nurtured. So my father, who turns 90 in October and is my hero, hated what he did for 40 years of his life. And I have two brothers, and my dad would drag his ass home from work. We never saw him in the morning. He was gone 5 o'clock, and he'd show up maybe 7 o'clock at night. My mom had this rule that we could eat dinner early, but when my dad came home, we had to come in from playing outside and sit with my dad while he ate. And if I heard this once, I heard it 1,000 times. My dad would look at us after another miserable day at work, and he'd look at us each, and he'd say, I don't care what you boys do with your life. I don't care whether you want to be a garbage man. I don't care whether you want to play the violin. I don't care whether you want to, be a farmer. If you want to be a garbage man, be the best garbage man. Be the absolute best garbage man.
And love it, right?
And love it. And if that's what your passion is, be great at it. He'd say the world is full of jack of all trades. Be the master of something. And, my older brother went to Syracuse University, never went for a job interview. He left Syracuse and always wanted to fly jets, and he went down and enrolled in Officers Candidate School and flew for the Navy for 20 some odd years. My younger brother followed me to Westchester, got a degree, and finished and went back to Thaddeus Stevens and became a carpenter, and now he's a master carpenter and builder. And we all followed our passion. Being an entrepreneur is essentially your willingness to embrace risk. And I think there are personality traits that are willing to embrace risk. Risk to me, it's never scared me. The idea of, needing a full-time job, needing that security, that never resonated with me, because I always knew that hard work could produce money.
Yeah.
So my parents showed us and taught us that whether you're digging a ditch or whether you're Bill Gates, yes, there's different income levels, but I always knew that I could make money.
You can make
doing
a buck.
Something, hustling.
Yeah.
And even when I first started my career and got out of college, I struggled financially. Mm-hmm. Continued bartending at night, blacktop driveways on weekends. It's just about hustling. So that part of it never bothered me.
We got to hit on the bartending.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the things that you and I have in common. I've never owned a piece of real estate other than the ones I've lived in. But I've always told people bartending, I've learned more about life and about people as a bartender than any other job or any other experience I've ever had. How about you?
Couldn't agree more. My first gig was I actually started bartending events. I got hooked up with a caterer, and we did events down at the Bourse Building in Philadelphia. So Mayor Good was the mayor in Philadelphia at the time. I bartended a big gig for him. Had a couple of private parties and some sketchy condo areas of Old City at the time, and you just see everything. And then my first real gig was at the Oyster Bar in Marshallton, and you see all aspects of life. People at a bar. When you go to a bar now, you're if you've had a rough day, if you're in a fight with your girlfriend or your wife, I mean, the bartender hears it all. And again, bartending to me, in terms of how do you take a job and translate it into revenue for yourself, all a bartender has to do is engage in conversation, listen to someone, and if you do that down the bar, if you spread yourself around the bar, at the end of the day, there's piles of money there as people get up and leave.
That's right.
And it's just like, wow, this is not only great, I'm talking to all these people, but if I just, it's such an easy thing to do, and you learn. My God, I met business people, I met friends. It's incredible.
They become like your extended family and you theirs, especially if you have regulars.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I had this
absolutely.
woman who I could count on my shift. I worked at a little dive bar in South Philly. I could count on her always being there, and one night she wasn't there, and I immediately knew something was wrong. Well, here she mistook crazy glue for her eye drops and glued one of her eyeballs shut. But they were our people, man. Faults and all.
It's a great place to cut your teeth and learn about life very quickly.
Do you think you've brought some of those into your career?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I don't want to say every business, but 99% of all business is about people. People make buying decisions. People still make decisions today, and it's about communicating with people, and communicating at a bar is no different than communicating over a boardroom table or in the middle of a large business transaction. It's your ability to talk to somebody. I'm a big believer in everybody has to win. I have never gone into a transaction where my goal is I'm going to crush this person, I'm going to win, and I'm going to leave this person. It's really about everybody feeling good about it. And I equate, like, you go to buy a shirt and you go into a department store, a dress shirt or a tie, and the salesperson's phenomenal, and they're like, oh my God, this purple shirt looks great on you, and this pink tie or this crazy tie looks great on you, and you're all consumed. Like, this person looks good, they're dressed well, oh, they must know what they're doing. You buy all this stuff, you get home, you put it on, and you're like, what the hell? I mean,
it's not you, right?
I mean, I just got sold a bill of goods,
Yeah.
and this person who's making a commission or whatever, they're laughing all the way to the bank. Well, I'm never going back there ever to buy another shirt from that person, because I felt inside that I got taken advantage of. Same way, at any aspect of your life, when you're a consumer, you'll want to feel good about that. And I think it's really important as the seller to have the same goals. Make everybody feel good so they come back. And that's kind of how I've run my career.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you've had situations where you've treated people fairly, and to your surprise, you've been back at the table with those same people again, and maybe that previous relationship you've had has helped the next transaction, right?
Repeat business for me is it's an everyday thing. I mean, and I'm proud of that, and I'm not bragging about it. It's what the goal was. Mm-hmm. Getting someone to do business with you for the first time is difficult and should be difficult. Getting somebody to do repeat business with you should be a normal part of your business plan. Again, if you give them what they want at a fair price, they should want to come back. Why would you want to go anywhere else? I mean, people have, favorite restaurants. People have, because they feel that they're treated well. They feel good there. Actually, this week, a tenant of mine for 20 years, Richard Klump, Diamond Graphics in Downingtown, is moving out of my building. He's downsizing. And I tried to move him into another space. We both tried. He sent me this beautiful email just saying, "Hey, 20 years of friendship and business relationship. That's I'm proud of that. That's,
of course,
right.
That's awesome.
Thank you."
So we're all really fortunate that every now and then we come across somebody that's not family, that we didn't grow up with, but really impacts our life. And if we can get a mentor, that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Jack.
Jack Lowe is he's still a legend in the real estate community. He will forever be my business mentor. I met Jack. I was still at Westchester. I was graduating. I guess it was May of '86. Pre-internet, when you actually had to read newspapers and business journals and things like that. And I kept reading about him. And I knew I wanted to get into the commercial real estate world. I think it was a combination of spending summers at my dad's factory, and my experience buying these little homes and rooming houses here in Westchester. I felt like commercial real estate was a place I wanted to be. So I called his office at like 7 o'clock one morning. And again, back when there were answering machines, and I figured I'd read about him. I'd read about project he was doing here in suburban Westchester, building these industrial parks.
Just called him blind.
And I just cold called him, which again, that's bartending, just communicating, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
of course. All
all the person can say is, don't ever call me again. And when you sell, as I had my whole life, selling whatever I was selling, no is just no. It's just a word.
Yeah.
If you keep asking, someone will say yes. So I called expecting to leave a message, and a guy picks up the phone, and he says, "This is Jack Lowe there." He says, "Speaking." So I launch into a 3-minute rap about Eli Kahn and how I've read about Mr. Lowe, I've read about you, and I want to come work for you. I'm going so fast, and I can sense him trying to get a word in, but I'm not letting him get a word in. So finally he cuts me off, and he says, "Eli, I'm in a room of like 7 people going over a project right now. I just picked up the phone because I don't like the phone going to voicemail or the answering machine. Can I call you back?" And I said, "Sure." So I gave my phone number, and I hung up the phone. I blew that. Like, there's no way this guy's calling me back. And sure enough, later that day, he called me back and invited me to come in and speak with him. And he didn't have room for me, and he, like other people who, when I was still in college trying to get that first job, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be in the commercial real estate business, and I thought maybe somebody would give me a job like carrying their plans and their briefcase, and I would learn by osmosis. And he told me, "Go, I called you back because you got to me, and I wanted to close this loop. Go learn something. You have to start somewhere. I don't have the structure to be able to just train somebody." So I took that advice and went and got a job for an office building developer in Montgomery County. Cut my teeth there, knocking on doors everywhere from North Broad Street all the way out through Conshohocken towards King of Prussia. Every day, all day, going into office buildings and knocking on doors and trying to convince people to move from their building to one of our buildings. After that, I hooked up with Kit Anstey here in Westchester and started doing some commercial and industrial real estate brokerage. And it was there that I came across a tenant called Canine Caterers, who had a big warehouse operation down on Matlack Street, and they wanted to have a new building built for them.
Mm.
And I hooked them up with Jack as a broker, as a third-party broker. And Jack, again, was gracious enough to allow me to sit in on all the different processes of how you take a raw piece of ground and you get the approvals and you design and engineer this warehouse building. And again, it was like, wow.
That was school.
That was school.
Right?
That was, again, another master's or PhD in learning, what the next step was. And I was maybe 24 at the time. And this is in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. It was we were heading into a recession, pretty deep recession, really bad recession, a collapse of the savings and loan industry. And I didn't like the brokerage. You know, I didn't like the idea of just being a matchmaker. I wanted to be on one end of the table or the other. I didn't just want to be a middleman. And Jack called me up and asked me to come in, and he said, "Listen, I can't pay you what you're making as a real estate broker, but I need somebody like you." And he said, "What would it take?" And I said, pointed him, and I said, "You teach me how to sit in your chair. You teach me all the things that you are an expert in: construction administration, finance. I'll fill every building you have. I'll do all your leasing. That's kind of second nature to me. I don't know these other areas of the business as well as you do." And
see, that's a great lesson, though. Like, you know, I think most people, we're all so transactional. We're all about how can I make the most at this present time. And look, we have bills. For you, it was always a long game, right?
It's a marathon, Pat. If there's one thing I try to convince young people today, I took a 80% pay cut, an 80% pay cut. So, you know, as you walk up the ladder in your career, I jumped down like 5 rungs of the ladder because I knew that I wanted this, and I wanted it because I loved it. It wasn't about just money.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I wanted to do with my life. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my wife. She knew, my wife has supported me from day one. She knew that I was I was in it for the long game, and she sacrificed early on. I mean, all our friends were buying houses and townhouses. We lived on Price Street. I'm sorry, on Minor Street, West Minor Street, in a 1-bedroom apartment. Now, we owned the apartment building, but you know, we lived in the smallest unit that was there.
Yeah.
My daughter was born there, and we didn't have a house until she was 2, and so sacrificing that and sacrificing short-term revenue and income for the long game. It's not about what you're making today. It's what are you're going to work a long time. Kids today are going to work for 50 plus years. That's a long game.
Mm-hmm.
You better love what you do, and you better have a plan as to how you can potentially earn the revenue that you're going to need to potentially be able to retire at a certain point in time. So going back to school, being passionate about what you want to do, understanding where technology is going, what industries are being destroyed by technologies, what industries are being created due to technology. You know, it's TV. You don't see TV repair stores around like you used to. You know, for a reason. You don't see. Blockbuster Video is gone for a reason. Mm-hmm. So you got to look forward. And it's okay to sacrifice now and for the future. And so Jack took me in, did every single thing he said he was going to do in our relationship. We had partnership agreements. So I said to Jack, I'll do whatever you need me to do, but when I find an opportunity, I want to bring it to you and I want to be partners with you. And he said yes. Nothing in paper, nothing in writing, just said yes. And as soon as we got through that first couple of years of the recession, we started buying buildings together, and we did for 25 years. We developed an incredible relationship and an incredible portfolio of real estate. It was maybe the greatest partnership that I'll ever had in my business partnership I've ever had in my life, because Jack was an expert in one side of the business, I was an expert in another, and we just complemented each other, and it was seamless. Never had an argument, never raised our voices to one another. We each had a goal. We communicated that, and it was music, really, from a business perspective. So Jack tragically passed, and we had bought this property together at the corner of Gay and Church Streets. We were planning an 8-story building that had 5 levels of condominiums, and Jack was living on North New Street outside of town, past the stadium, and kind of wanted to come into town and live in a kind of an urban lifestyle. And he got sick, and we kind of shelved the whole project and sat for about a year. And walking through town one day, trying to think of, you can name a building. You can name a building after anybody.
Yeah.
Millions of buildings named after guys, and they're just buildings. I think the one thing Westchester has missing, in my opinion, of the years I've been here, is a kind of a center square, like an area where people could just gather and have coffee and chat, or what have you. So we came up with the idea of not building on the corner and creating a public plaza on the corner. The 8-story building, I think, was about 120,000 square feet. The building we're building is 45,000 square feet. First time in my career that I ever left so much value and density on the table, but it was the right thing to do. And the idea was that we would name this plaza after Jack. We'll commemorate him. People will know it as Jack's Corner or whatever. We're not exactly sure the actual name that we're going to come up with, but it'll have some artwork in it that'll be kind of revolving, and we're hoping to get the community involved, and eventually people will create artwork because we will display it here. We're going to do this really cool fountain at the very corner. That will be a place where, again, moms in their strollers or kids want to go to this fountain because there's going to be some dynamic stuff going on in the fountain. And the plaza will have chairs and benches, and it'll ultimately be the entrance into the office building, and there'll be hopefully 2 restaurants on either side of the plaza. So it's a project that is clearly not the most profitable project that we've ever done. It's a project that has the most meaning. I hit Borough Council here at a time when there was a change in Borough Council, and initially they rejected the idea. It was a very anti-development group of people on council, but again, I'm always in it for the long game. I knew it was the right thing to do. We boarded the building up, waited a couple of years. New council people came on and fully embraced the concept, and I think the borough is better off for this project. I think when it opens, people will realize that, wow, this is really something. It will make that corner the pedestrian corner in town. That's kind of where all the action will focus when it's completed.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, we're real proud of it.
So, without getting too philosophical, this incredible relationship, you finding your mentor, and now this building being named after this guy, all started because a kid picked up a telephone.
Yeah. That's all it is, just communication. It's like asking a girl out on a date. You can see it, when you're 15 or 18, or, kids today seem to be, taking longer and longer to, it just ask. All a girl can say is no, man, and then you ask another one, and eventually, you know what I mean? It's the same philosophy. We all people, we all put our pants on the same way. We all have the basic same. Just communicate with people, and from a business perspective, it's really the core of all business. All great business people end up having the ability to communicate. Now, I will tell you, technology is changing that a little bit, because there are, obviously, you hear about guys like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates who may not be great communicators,
yeah,
but had phenomenal ideas. Most of us don't have that great an idea, but again, most of business is all about just picking up the phone and asking.
Yeah. And
it's still the joy I get in business today is that part of the business. It's asking somebody if they share this idea, and when they say yes, that's like the peak of my satisfaction. The rest of it, implementing it all and getting it all done, it's fun,
then
but
you're
it's
stuck in the tactics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But getting somebody to having that, again, go back to, you can ask a girl out on a date and she says yes, man. That, when you're a kid, man, that's like is there anything better than that?
There's
She's
not.
Not right. So that's kind of how I look at business.
I know one thing that's really important to you and Jean, your wife, is affordable housing.
Yeah.
And I think it's an issue everywhere.
Every single municipality in the state of Pennsylvania has their own laws. There's no regional planning. So the borough of Westchester, which has very dense housing, has all the same zoning classifications as East Bradford does, or go out to the western part of the county. Nobody really wants to address it because nobody wants to create the kind of density that is required to provide affordable housing. The regulations to build anything anymore, many of them environmental regulations, many of them good regulations, stormwater regulations, have quadrupled the cost of building a home, or an office building, or an industrial building.
Wow.
Are they good regulations? Yeah, because back in the 50s, you could go scrape a hillside, put up an office building and all this parking, and the rain would hit your parking lot and run downhill. And the guy below you, or at the bottom of the hill, like the borough of Downingtown, the bottom of the valley, got screwed. So a lot of these regulations are good regulations and needed regulations. But here in the county, we have zoning regulations that don't allow for the density of housing that's needed because land is so expensive in Chester County, and everywhere where people want to live, right? So, yes, you could go out to Oxford and find inexpensive land, but, there's no public water, there's no public sewer, there's no shopping. So that's not where you want to create affordable housing. You want to create affordable housing where people want to live, where there's public transportation, where you can walk, you don't need a car. And most of these communities just don't allow the density of housing to be created. It's something that we really want to try to figure out a logical solution that's not just the philanthropical, because that's not the way it's going to get solved. It's going to get solved because people need a place to live affordably, and you have to be able to create housing for people who have the lowest value jobs from a pricing perspective. I mean, you hear stories about coffee shops in the Silicon Valley where there's nobody to work. They're shipping people in from 2 hours each way to sell coffee because there's no place for those people to live. That's not a good model. You need areas for teachers to live. You need areas for housing for waitresses and bartenders and every aspect in order for society to work and function. And we're just not paying attention on it. And I actually, it starts with the municipality. And I'm actually in conversations with the borough of Westchester, who I think will end up being the leader in this in Chester County.
Wow.
Because people want to live in Westchester. When you talk to the agencies here, I had a meeting recently where the Chester County Housing Authority was there. I mean, there is affordable housing in Coatesville, but there's a lot of people who they don't want to live in Coatesville. So as a human, you should have a choice of where you want to live, no matter what your income level is. And if you're a low-income person, you shouldn't just be forced to go into one area because that's where the affordable housing is. You should have the right. There should be some opportunity in Westchester. And I think Westchester is going to be one of the first groups to do that. We're working on a project at the old Rubenstein building in Westchester, the old stationery store, and we're planning a new apartment building. And the whole goal of the apartment building is to provide new housing. It's not going to be low-income housing. It's going to be more affordable housing, and the units are going to be smaller. It's going to be lots of amenity areas and things like that. But we really want to try to create housing that works for more people. Seniors is a big market as people are aging longer and being more active longer. That's an enormous population of people that don't need a lot of space, but they need security and they need elevators. So we're going to try to address some of it there, but that's not really going to address really truly affordable or lower income housing. And I have another project that I'm just starting to work with the borough on about looking at how do we do this, even if it's a model or a pilot program to say to other communities and other developers, hey, this can work. And maybe it's not a money maker, maybe it just breaks even, but it serves as a model.
But you're having the conversations, and that's kind of where it starts.
It does. It starts.
Yeah.
But you have to have conversations with a community that's open and receptive to it.
Sure.
And Westchester is. The current Westchester Borough Council and staff is very receptive to that conversation.
Yeah. Well, our studio is located here at Align Space, which is in the F&M building on the corners of High and Market Street, right dead set in the center of town in Westchester. And the place did not look like this about a year ago.
It didn't. You guys have done an amazing job. Place looks great. Yeah, this is a space that the borough really needed. This is kind of this took a really a space that it's a world-class building, right? This is the architectural monument in Westchester, the F&M building, and it always will be. But you took this space and really made it something special. And for anybody who hasn't been here and seen the opportunities here, the co-working space, the event space, it's offered a whole new dynamic to town. And town again is morphing, and for business folks who have their offices in town or outside of town, this is a spot that is, again, changing the way people do business in Westchester and offers an opportunity for people to have something different.
Yeah, you were mentioning even big companies are starting to look at this co-working model as a solution, correct?
I mean, think about, you have people who don't need a desk in their office every single day. And to let those people not have to come into an office every day, but just be productive. Like, as a business owner, you just want to get things done. So whether someone's sitting at a cubicle, staring at their computer, or they're sitting in one of your, your beautiful small offices or the lounge or the sofa, as long as the work gets done, everything's done electronically now. You don't need people necessarily in your office. So all companies, and I think guys my age and older have been the last to embrace this. But if you come here and see the vibe and see how productive people can be, it's all about getting production. So
absolutely,
yeah, you guys have a great space here, great model.
Cliche question, of course, but what book's been most impactful for you?
Wow, I read a lot of real estate books. I mean,
Do you really?
I do. I'm fascinated by people who did what I do before me. There's a book called Zeckendorf, which is about a famous New York City family and developer and the trials and tribulations that he had, again, in different economic times. Listen, I do a lot of really cool things here in Chester County, but when I go to New York City and you look at these buildings, I am in awe of just how, I understand the economics of it. It's the same model that I use. It's just the risk factor is off the charts, and the dollars and the number of zeros are off the charts. But my business has been dominated over the course of time by some real gamblers and some real risk takers. And there are you could list people, a lot of very successful guys who made it, lost it, made it, lost it. Mm-hmm. And that mentality is fascinating to me. I've modeled my career after not taking that level of risk. So I never lose it. I never just double down. But, if you ever sit at a blackjack table and you see a guy, yep, double down, or at a craps, let's just roll the dice on it all. That's been a predominant personality trait in my business. So learning that and researching that and the history of what not to do, so I don't make the same mistake. So those are the kind of books I'm mostly reading.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What do you still want to build? Like, if there's one thing that's kind of your dream project, do you have one in mind?
I really don't. I mean, I'm very much understanding the market has really helped me in my career and been a key part of my life and my career. And I say this to young people: become an expert in something. I don't know anything about tech stocks. I don't know anything about. I'm not on Facebook, Instagram. I'm a real estate guy, 100%. I mean, I read a lot about other businesses, but people say, "Oh, you invested in Uber?" No, I use Uber. I don't know anything about what those guys do and how they do it. I focus 100% of my brain power on my business from a business perspective.
It's working.
It is, but you talked about the low-income housing. That's something that no one's quite figured out yet. I mean, the idea that you build a project. I mean, you see these projects in all the big cities, these towers. I mean, that was someone's good idea at some point in time, right? To take these kind of very, very low income areas and tear the blight down. And okay, let's build these, 15-story brick bunkers with green area around them. You look at them now and you go, who would want to live there? But that was a really well thought out idea that just wasn't executed well. It just has not been solved, and it's something that I just think I'd like to, and Gene and I have talked about it. We'd like to try to figure it out. So everybody has an opportunity, and it may not be everybody, because again. But there's more opportunity for people to have a choice and have a quality place to live, even if it's not big, even if it's not, in today's standards, people might, it's got to be, there's got to be a better way than the way we've been doing it. So that's, I think, kind of, I'll continue to do projects and I love redevelopment. I love taking older buildings and doing something with them. But that's something I think I could see myself in the next 20 years really focusing on.
It's a great goal to have.
Yeah.
And it'll help a lot of people.
It will.
Let's end on this light note. Like we talked about, there's a million places to eat in town.
Yeah.
What's your spot? If you had to pick one, I know it's hard.
Oh, God, it's harder now than ever. It used to be Vincent's. My buddy Bruce Donahoe ran a great jazz bar, and I miss it every day. Been going to Mercado lately.
Oh, me too.
I love the food, love the vibe.
The lunch buffet is outrageous.
The lunch buffet is outrageous, yeah. Just going back to Vincent's and my buddy Bruce. Bruce still hosts jazz dinners, so not exactly sure where he advertises them, but he'll go to different restaurants. He'll go to Spence, and he'll bring a world-class musician in, a jazz musician, and he'll invite people to dinner. If you ever get a chance to do one of those, you should really take advantage of it.
I'm on it.
Okay.
This is fun.
Yeah, Pat.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure,
I think
buddy.
there's going to be a second episode.
Cool. Great. Thanks.
All right,
buddy.
Eli.
Yeah, take care.